All right, ladies, how has the week been so far?
Good. Went by
Good?
fast too. I don't mind it.
Okay. All right. It's Friday, so I guess most of you very tired by now. And it is understandable that you're tired. All right, so what we're going to do is that we're going to continue. Mrs. Brown Chambers told me that she started the causes of the American Rev with you, but I'm going to finish this slide and she'll pick up with the causes next week. All right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Afternoon,
what we
sir. Out of my class.
go ahead.
Hi, sir. How are you? Come.
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you
Us.
doing?
Oh, I am great. Just looking forward to the end of the day.
I can just imagine. Same here.
Yes, yes.
Hope the
Like
weather is
that, as
treating
I
you well.
always tell my daughter. Exactly. Yes. All right. Have a good weekend, sir. My daughter kicking me off her chair.
All right then. Same to you.
Okay.
All right, ladies, we're going to look at the 13 colonies. And we would have started the 13 colonies. Anybody want to name the 13? Let us see who the original 13 colonies. All right, let us see if I
Sir, can I try?
go ahead, Farquharson.
Okay, so you have Georgia.
Repeat.
You have Georgia.
Georgia, you hear
Sir, I
Georgia?
have Massachusetts.
Wait,
Massachusetts. New
wait 1 second,
Hampshire.
please. If you're following CNN, you realize that Georgia is very prominent in the news. Well, you're not watching the news. A lot of things going on in the US election, and Georgia is a very important state right now.
And Pennsylvania.
And Pennsylvania, very good. So we have Georgia, which was one of the original, yes. What is,
Massachusetts.
yes. Another one,
Connecticut.
yes.
New York.
New York, yes.
New Jersey.
New Jersey,
New
Is
Hampshire.
Maryland one?
New Hampshire,
Oh,
yes.
Maryland.
Maryland,
Virginia.
mm-hmm.
North Carolina. South Carolina.
North Carolina, South Carolina, and
Rhode Island.
Japan.
Ireland. You sure that we have where it is? So you have covered most of them. What about
Delaware.
Delaware?
Delaware.
Yes. So these are, and if you realize from the news, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and which other one giving a lot of problem? North Carolina. These states are now in the battle to decide who will be the next president of the United States. And so we know Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia were part of, well, North Carolina and Pennsylvania were part of the original 13 colonies. Yes, they were part of the original 13 to determine the United States. They were the first part of the United States. This is what the United States looked like originally. And after a period of time, after they fought for their independence, they are going to expand and take over all of the different places, right? The land to the east, to the west, I should say, the land to the west. So all of the land to the west and even the south, they are going to take over. And you see that they would have taken over quite a lot of land, because the US is a very big place today. Now, ladies, we looked at some of the reasons why Europeans would have arrived on this part. When the European arrived, who they saw living in North America. When the Europeans arrived in North America, who were actually living there?
The Native American.
The Native Americans. Very good. What were some of the reasons why the Europeans came to this side and settled in North America?
Because they wanted wealth and more resources and they run away from debt.
Yes, some were in debt, some wanted wealth. Another reason.
Overpopulation. Overpopulation.
Repeat.
Overpopulation.
Where you had the overpopulation?
So there could have been overpopulation in Great Britain.
Overpopulation in Europe?
Oh, in Europe, you said, sir? Never mind.
Sir,
Yes.
maybe
Go
they
ahead.
wanted to form their own nation.
Well, yes, some of them would wanted to form their own nation, but why? We know for sure that they wanted wealth, and because once they reach this side of the world, they are going to see quite a lot of natural resources that they will be able to trade with Europe to make money. So that is one. Not only Europe they are going to trade with, but they are going to also trade with the Caribbean. So they are going to make money from trade. Well, some of them were actually in debt. They owe people money, and so they wanted an escape. So they could work the money in North America and send back the money, send back the resources to Europe to pay for their debt. What other reason why they would have migrated?
Sir, can I guess?
Go ahead.
So is it because some of them didn't want to be in control, like they didn't want the government of a certain area to be in control of them anymore or something?
Yes, that is correct. Some of them didn't agree with some of the rules of the government, but what were some of the rules? A major reason why they would have migrated.
Sir, taxes.
Not really. From Europe. Why they left Europe? Some left because of what?
Their religion, like practices.
Very good. So they left. One of the major reasons was because of religious issues. They were some of them, for example, the Puritans. Some of the Protestants were persecuted in Europe because of their religion, and they wanted to practice their religion without any form of persecution. All right, ladies, go ahead.
Last class with Miss Brown Chambers, the whole time we basically talked about how important or what a big factor the taxes were on them going to live in America.
Well, taxation was a reason, but started to, when they started out, it was not, that was not the original intent because of taxation. If you understand, that would have also been a reason, but not one of the original intent. The main reason, though, throughout literature was religious, and they also wanted wealth. Those were the two major reasons. Because most of the persons who would have settled in these colonies were escaping religious persecution. So we could also, not saying that taxation was not a reason, but it was not a significant reason. All right. The colonies were divided into how many regions? How many regions? 3 regions. What were the 3 regions?
New England, Middle Colonies, and South Colonies.
Very good. New England, Middle Colonies, and South Colonies. Now, I'm going to look at for today's class, we're going to look at the governments of the colonies, how they were governed. Then we're going to look at some of their economies and their culture. What were the different cultures that would have emerged between the different regions, right? So in reality, what we're going to do is that we are going to look at them from the region, because the regions were very, very similar. So all of this area, 1 second, please.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
Your mic is
You're not
unmuted.
muted.
Your mic.
Sorry.
All right, ladies. So we're going to look at how the different regions were governed, the different colonies were governed. I'm asking someone to read this for me, please.
Me, sir. Me, sir.
Sir, I'll read it.
Go ahead.
Girl, I said I would read it.
There were various systems of government used within the 13 colonies, referred to colonial government. All the systems of government in the 13 colonies elected their own legislature, parliament. They were all democratic. They all had a governor, governor's court, and a court system.
You just break up. Read the last part again.
They were all democratic. They all had a governor, governor's court, and a court system.
All right. So what happened, ladies, was that, yeah, thank you very much. So one thing you need to know is that for each of the different colonies, they had different government system. All of the system, they were not the same, how they would have governed themselves. So for example, Georgia government was very different from South Carolina, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Although at points there were similarities between them. One of the major similarities between these colonies, all the 13 colonies, one of the major similarities was that Europe, the Queen or the King of England at the time, sent a governor to, or appointed a governor to each of the colonies. So each colony had their own governor. So that is one of their we call it now, one of their government features. So each colony, the England at the time would have appointed a governor to each of the colonies. Another thing, ladies, was that each colony had their own legislature. Each colony had their own legislature. What do we mean by a legislature? Or what is the role of a legislature? It's right here. What is the role of a legislature?
Sir, the
All right.
member of parliament or something?
Yes, but what is the role? So take 2 minutes, take 3 minutes, write the word legislature in your book, in your notebook, and you're going to use your devices and you're going to define the role of a legislature. 3 minutes, ladies. Please go ahead. I'm giving you 3 minutes to do that. You're going to define the role of a legislature, what it is. Use Google. That's what Google is there for. And find out what is the role of a legislator. 3 minutes. Once you're through, please raise your hand. Still waiting on other students to raise their hand. We have 2 students, but you have 29 students in the class. What is the role of the legislature? So we know for sure that each of the colonies had their own governor. Who would have appointed the governor? The Queen or the King of England. While they had a governor, each colony had their own legislature. Go ahead, Weber.
Okay, sir. So according to Google, it says legislators work on making changes to the laws or pass
All right.
new legislation based on their constituents' needs.
Okay. All right. What do you understand from that? What would you draw
So
from
you're
that?
asking me what I understand?
Yes.
So they like change the laws based on what like is happening in their area
That is
at the time.
that is one. Salmon.
Camera, okay, cool.
Thank you very much, Weber. Go ahead.
Sir, they make the rules that are that their country or city is supposed to abide by.
Yes. And so one of the role of the legislature, so Weber, before we can change the rules, if you go to a new place and you live and you settle there, you will have to make the rules first before you can change any rules. Because remember that these people are well, they went there and they saw the Europeans, they killed the Europe, well, they went there and they saw the indigenous peoples, they took over their land, so they are setting up a new society there. And so one of the main purpose of the legislature was to make the rules, the laws that is going to govern the colonies. So each colony had their own legislature, and their own legislature, right, made the rules. And so from colony to colony, you're going to have different rules. Although some of the rules are going to be similar, you're going to have different rules. Now, a part of this, it said that they were all democratic. The truth is that only the whites alone were allowed to vote. Only the whites. So blacks were not allowed to vote, and the Indians were not allowed to vote. Only the whites alone could be elected or vote in the legislature. Not all whites could vote because it depends on the amount of money that our property or land that you would have owned. All right, ladies?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Harris, you're here? Harris is in the class?
Yes, sir.
But she's not speaking. Do you have a mic problem, Harris? I'm not seeing her. Mother Sil, you're here?
Yes, sir.
All right, so do me a favor. Tell me what was the government system like for the colonies? 3 features that we would have looked at so far.
Second,
3 features of the government systems of the colonies, or the colonies were governed.
say a breaking up. I can't hear you properly.
3 features how the colonies were governed.
There was one that they all had a governor and a legislator.
Very good. So they all had a governor. The governor was appointed by whom?
The queen and the king.
Or the king, because sometimes England has a queen, sometimes they have a king. So one, they all had a governor. The next one is that they all had a legislature. And what is the purpose of the legislature?
To make the law.
To make the laws. All the laws were similar between all the colonies?
No, sir.
Very good. Thank you very much. In addition to that, ladies, all the colonies had their own court system. Why people go to the court? Yes?
that include like marriage and stuff like that.
Yes. So, yes, the court deals with marriage issues, but what is the main reason for the court? Why do you have a court?
Sir, to settle something?
To settle what?
Sir, does it have something to do with like politics?
Certain issue?
To settle issues. So the one of the reason you have a court is that if there's any problem between any of the settlers, then you go to the court to solve that problem. If somebody should break a law, you go to the court to defend yourself, or the court could give you sanction, right? So another feature of their government was that each colony had their own court system. So one, they had a governor. Two, they had their court system. Although some of their laws were similar, they had different laws. And each colony had their own legislature. Now, ladies, somebody read this for me, please.
The
Go ahead,
various,
Parkinson.
the
There were
various
various
government systems of the first 13 colonies were royal colonies, charter colonies, and proprietary colonies.
All
Proprietary.
right. So we had three types of colonies, right? We had royal colonies. So some of them were royal colonies, some were chartered colonies, and some of the colonies were proprietary colonies, right? Now let us look what these three types of colonies were, how they were governed, and that is how their government was organized. Go ahead for me. Royal colonies. Arida, please.
They're the same person or somebody else.
Anyone?
Sir, I can read.
Yes.
The royal government, the royal colonies, royal colonies.
slide.
What the hell? What is going on?
Continuous.
Parkinson, go ahead.
Okay. Royal government. The royal colonies were ruled directly by the English monarchy. Proprietary government. The king granted land to people in North America who then formed proprietary colonies. Charter colony government. The charter colony were generally self-governing and their charters were granted to the colonies.
All right. So there were three types of government system. The royal colonies. These colonies, Britain ruled directly. No issue. Britain would have ruled directly. Britain would have been very involved in how these colonies were governed. While the proprietary colony, these colonies Britain gave them land and they were ruled by a merchant class. So like the very wealthy people who owned properties, they were the ones who were very involved in this colony. And then the next one was a chartered colony who Britain ruled them, but they had some form of independence from Britain. They were still under Britain, but they had some level of autonomy. So not every rule that they had to send it to Britain for sanction. So those were how these different colonies were organized. Now we're going to look at New England, and we're going to look at their government, how their economy and their society was organized. So this is it, New England right here. I'm going to ask Weber. Weber, could you read this for me, please?
Okay. So the settlers here wanted to keep their family together and practice their own religions. They were used to doing many things themselves and not depending on other people for much. Some were looking for economic opportunities. Some started fishing settlements.
Very good.
That's
So
it.
those who were actually in New England, that area, those colonies, the settlers, they came mainly with their families, and one of the main reasons why they left Europe was that they wanted to practice their own religion because they were being persecuted in Europe. And so they wanted to practice their own religion. Some of them who lived within the New England colonies, they wanted economic opportunities to make wealth. And some of them would have started fishing settlements. So along the coastal area, they would have established fishing villages that they would have one of the major fishing stuff that they would have done was that they would have captured the fish, get the fish, and then after they catch the fish, then they are going to salt the fish. They salt the fish, and when they salt the fish, they are going to send that fish to the Caribbean or send it to Europe. And so that's one of the major reasons one way in which they would have made quite a lot of money by selling salted fish.
Excuse me,
Uh,
sir.
Go ahead.
Mackenzie and Richard said that their Wi-Fi is acting up.
All right, understand. Next, Cooper. Cooper is here.
Yes, sir.
Could you read this slide for me, please?
What do you say?
Read this slide for me, please.
New England colonies. People in New England towns lived, worked, and worshipped close together. People used a barter system instead of money. This means to trade goods. The meeting house was the most important building in the town.
All right, continue. Continue for me, please.
Women and girls spent hours cooking and preparing food. They churned butter and dried fruits. This food was stored to last through the winter. They used animal fat to make candles and soaps. The men would hunt and work in the fields. They also made their own tools.
Very good. So we have an understanding of what life was like in the New England colonies. Thank you very much. The Dunkley. Dunkley,
Yes, sir.
could you read this for me, please? What was their economy like in the New England colonies?
New England colonies economy. Farming and fishing communities made their own clothes and shoes. Corn and wheat grew in large numbers and much shipped to England. Boston was the major New England port.
All right. So I want you to realize this. Notice that Boston was very important because we are going to come up on Boston again when we are looking at the causes of the American Revolution. Now, as earlier in the class, a student said that Mrs. Brown Chambers spent a lot of time to look at the taxes. Now, the taxes that Mrs. Brown Chambers looked at taxes were actually one of the causes why, after a period of time, these 13 colonies are going to decide that, listen, we are going to leave Britain. We don't want to be under the control of Britain again or England. So we're looking at the colonies before. What we're doing now is that we're looking at the colonies before people start to complain that they didn't want to be ruled by Britain. So we know that they would have done farming, fishing. They made their own clothes and shoes. Uh, corn and wheat they grew in great abundance. And also, they would have shipped quite a lot of these goods back to Europe, all right, and in particular, England. Now, ladies, we're going to look, so that was the New England colony. Now we're going to look at the middle colonies. And the middle colonies, many of the colonists long to find a refuge to live and worship away from the king's rule. So most of the persons who would have lived or migrated to the middle colonies, they wanted to worship freely. They didn't want to be under the control of the king, because the king wanted everybody in the colony, well, in Europe at the time, or in England at the time, to have one religion. They didn't want people to have different denomination, and they wanted to practice their own denomination. And so they wanted a safe place to live. Now, we're going to look now at the middle colony. I'm going to ask Edwards, Dominic Edwards, could you read this for me, please?
The settlers that were looking to practice their own religion or to make money. Many of these people didn't bring their family with them from England and were the perfect workers for the hard work required in ironworks and shipyards.
Yes, continue.
Economy. These colonies were part agriculture, part industrial. Wheat and other grains were grown. Factories produced iron, paper, and textiles. Trading goods with England was common.
Common, very good. So they had factories where they produce iron, paper, and textile. Textile is clothing. So that was one of the way in which these middle colonies would have, the middle colonies, they were really the industrial ones out of all the three regions. The middle colonies were very industrial because they weren't mainly agricultural. They also had factories. But all right, before I ask that question, I will come back to that. I'm going to ask Prendergast. Prendergast, could you read this for me, please?
Okay, sir.
Go ahead.
Wait, sir, which one do you want me to read? Because you're kind of scrolling.
No, man, I'm still at this. Where is it's on the screen now?
The middle colonies?
Yes.
Middle colonies, the Quakers, believed all people were equal, refused to swear loyalty to the king or queen, refused to participate in war.
Wait, you're looking at the Quakers is the one that is on the main screen. The middle colonies facts, sometimes called the breadbasket. This is the one that you're supposed to read. Here.
Okay, sir, I see it now. Middle colonies facts, sometimes called the breadbasket colonies because they grew so many crops for making bread. In addition to the lost land for growing crops, there were several large harbors. Germans built the Conestoga wagon here.
All right, so this wagon that you see right here, that you see very popular in movies and all over the different places, that was built there and it was very popular. If you go to this colony back then, you'd have seen quite a lot of these wagons. Continue.
Settler
Here,
Yes. Continue for me, please.
here came from many different places and backgrounds: Dutch, Swedish, French, Belgian, English, and more. Many lived in Philadelphia.
Yes, what
Means
Philadelphia means?
brotherly love in Greek. It was founded on the principles of living peacefully.
Yes, so quite a lot of people from very different backgrounds would have come to the middle colonies and settled. And once they settled in the middle colonies, they they said that we come from all of these different places. England is in charge of us, but guess what? We welcome the French, the Dutch, the Swedish, those from Belgium, because guess what? We are Philadelphia. We are brotherly love, right? So Philadelphia was one example of a middle colony. Now continue for me, please. This one.
Believed all people were, oh, the middle class Quakers believed all people were equal, refused to swear loyalty to the king or queen, refused to participate in war, came to the Americas for refuge and worship, lived in New Jersey, New York.
Very good. So those in the middle colonies, some of the persons who live in the middle colonies were the Quakers. And as I said, they believe in equality. They didn't like the rules of the king or the queen. They believe that you should not swear to the king or the queen. And also, they refused to participate in war. And you know that the king and the queen love a lot of war. There's a lot of war going on in England, and England fighting with a lot of different countries, right? And the truth is that they came to the Americas to practice their religion. All right. Anybody know? Before I go to the anybody know one of the famous Quakers or a product that is associated with the Quakers?
Quakers oats.
Very good. Very good. So the Quakers, they were the Quaker oats is one of, one second. So the Quaker oats that we know today, it was is one of such thing that they would have started in the middle colonies. And today we still have the Quaker oats that we use today. And a lot of cereals that we use, like cornflakes, because they would have grown a lot of we call it now wheat. So you have a lot of cornflakes, a lot of wheat things that they would have also used. All right. I need to finish this today. So the Quaker oats. Who is not familiar with the Quaker oats? The Quaker oats was one of the, that in fact, that is where oats, they were the first to make oats. Every other brand of oats is a copy of the Quaker oats, right? The next colonies, another region was the southern colonies. And these colonies, go ahead for me. I need somebody to read this for me, please.
Me, sir.
Go
I'll read
ahead.
it. Oh, go ahead. Whosoever said that. Okay.
Two groups made up these colonies, two things that was very prominent in these colonies. Go ahead for me, please.
What is an overseer? Someone that is hired to watch slaves as they work. Plantation owners hired overseers to watch the slave and make sure
Yes.
they did their jobs. Indigo. What is indigo? A plant that was used in making wool dye. The farmers grew indigo plants. Indigo was an important cash crop for the southern.
All right. So thank you very much. So we know for the southern colonies that for the southern colonies, they had quite a lot of plantations and they would have engaged in slavery. So they went and they got Africans. First, they used to enslave the Indians, the native Indians, or the indigenous peoples. And in fact, all the colonies had slavery, but in the southern colonies, it was very prevalent. In fact, in the southern colonies, they had very large plantations in the southern colonies. They were involved in agriculture, had plantations. Most of the workers came from Africa and they grew things like tobacco, rice, and they also used indigo, which was a type of wood that they used to make dye. All right. And another fact, when it comes to the southern colonies, was that slavery was legal. Children born to slaves became slaves themselves. Sometimes the families were broken and sold to other plantations, and enslaved people were often abused. Now, ladies, I am not saying that the southern colonies were the only ones that had slaves. All the colonies had slaves. The middle colonies, the New England colonies had slaves, the southern, but the southern colonies, places like Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, those places, slavery was ingrained there. Their entire economy was built on slavery, right? And that's one of the reasons why in the southern colonies, even until today, the south of the US is very racist. But guess what? In Georgia, Georgia has changed things because a lot of people migrate from, Black people migrate from New York and move to Georgia. And that's one of the reasons why Georgia is changing. All right, ladies, so we know.
Wait, sir. And Jada Kingdom.
Repeat.
Sir, like Spice and Jada Kingdom.
Yes, they moved to Florida, to Georgia, Atlanta.
Sir.
Or work there.
Sir.
Go ahead.
What do you mean by Georgia is changing? Can you elaborate a little bit, please?
Oh, Georgia has been, so after slavery ended in the United States, these colonies, like the South colonies, they remain very, very racist against Blacks, right?
Yes,
right
sir.
up until the 1960s, very racist. Oh, and a lot of Blacks, once slavery ended, they moved away from these colonies and they went to the New England colonies to live because they didn't, or the middle colonies to live because those colonies were less racist. And so recently, a lot of people are moving, Blacks are moving from New York and moving and New Jersey and Maine, and they are living in the South, especially in Georgia, places like Atlanta. And so because of that, the majority Blacks that are coming to live back in Georgia, it is challenging the whites there in terms of their vote. So right now, instead of Georgia being a fully white place, even though you have a lot of white place there, the Blacks are coming there to take over and the Blacks are voting for a particular political party in the US. All right?
Yes, sir.
So ladies, this is the end of we look at the 3 colonies, the 3 regions. The 3 regions were
New
what were,
England Colony,
yes,
Southern, and Middle.
yes, and you also look at the economy of these colonies, and also you would have looked at the
The
wait,
Quakers.
the government system of the colonies. Now, after time, ladies, do you believe that the colonies are going to want to be governed by England? These 13 colonies?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, because especially some of these colonies, especially that had things like large plantations, industry, and they are making a lot of money. Some of these colonies were making way money than people that live in England. So if you are making way money than other people, you're going to feel what? How are you going to feel?
Bossy.
And you're going to, so if I send a rule, if I'm from England and I send a rule over and I said, people in the colonies, the 13 colonies, you need to follow this rule, how are you going to react? If you're making way more money, how are you going to
And crime.
go ahead?
People are gonna rebel.
People are going to rebel. So people are going to say, listen, you over there in England, okay, we are originally from Europe, but we are now by ourselves, we are independent, and so you can't make any rules for us, and we are the ones who are sending most of the goods over to England so you could eat and survive. You can't make our rules. We need to make our own rules and govern ourselves. You should not make any laws. And so one of the rules that they are going to pass, England is going to pass for the colonies, is that they need to pay taxes. They need to pay certain taxes, and the colonies are going to say, listen, we are not paying any taxes. And so as a result of that, ladies, what is going to happen is that you're going to have a revolution taking place where the 13 colonies going to join together and said, listen, we are united. All of us, we are united, and we are united against England, because England or Britain should not tell us what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and the different taxes. So when you meet again on Tuesday with Mrs. Brown Chambers, you're going to learn more about the reasons why they want to separate themselves from England or Britain. Is it much clearer now, ladies?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Very good. So, ladies, enjoy the weekend and see you again on Friday.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir, and same to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, sir. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Goodbye.